In this video, we're going to take a look at the Panorama Shape node. So to start, I'm going to create a new graph. So I'll choose File, New, Substance Graph. And for the graph template, you'll see that we have this new Studio Panorama option. So for the name, I'm just going to call this Environment, or ENV for Environment, and click OK. And so now you can see that I have some nodes here. And first thing I want to do is set my resolution. I want this to become a studio environment light that I'm going to create here directly in Substance Designer. So I'm going to set my resolution. Let's just click this unlink so that we can use a non-square ratio. I'm going to set this to be 2048 by 1024. And we'll just fit this to view. And you can see that this is my panoramic image that I'm going to be working with. So if I want to view this here in my 3D view, what I can do is right-click my output, drag and drop, and then add this here to the input of the environment. Now, I also want to see this environment in my 3D view, so I'm going to come over to Environment and choose Edit. Now, in Substance Designer 6, this visible display component is set to false by default, so I'm just going to enable this to true, and now this allows me to see my 3D environment. I can rotate the 3D environment by using the Shift, Control, and right mouse button to rotate the environment. So now you can see that here in this graph, we have this gradient background, and we can edit these values here in the gradient editor. Then we also have this area light section, which is comprised of a blend of these three Panorama Shape nodes. The Panorama Shape node is new to Substance Designer 6. So here, I'm just going to take a look at this first blend node, and I'm actually going to use this here in my 3D view so that we can just isolate one of these shapes. So let's right-click and set this to be our environment input. So here you can see that we've got this single shape. So if I come over here to the shape node parameters, I have some options I can work with. Here in the 2D view, I also have this transform widget. And so here you can see that I can just start to move the shape. I can scale the shape, rotate the shape. The shape will also automatically tile for me when I start to move it here towards the edge. Now for this shape, I can also change this from square to disc. So this is going to give me a different shape to work with, and we can also use custom shapes, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. So right now you can see that, I've moved this light here towards the top, and if we look, here is the light. So now I've just produced this kind of directional lighting from the top down. Now on this light, we have the ability to change our shape intensity. So I'm just going to drive this up quite a bit, and here you can see that I'm getting a pretty intense value. This is all working in the HDR 32-bit float. So if I click the info button here in my 2D view and I sample over into this white area, you can see that the RGB values are at 18, well above 1. Now, this is working because, again, this Panorama Shape node is using the output format HDR 32 float. So here for this intensity, I'm going to take this back to something like maybe 2. Let's adjust the scale, and we'll just move this guy down so we have this single disc. And I'm just going to rotate this so it's here in my 3D view. Let's also take a look at this shape soft border, so you can see that we can really soften the border of this shape, or we can make this a pretty hard edge shape. We also have this hotspot intensity. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to take the main shape intensity and set it to something below 1. And so you'll notice that here we kind of have this grayish area. Now we have this really intense hotspot area, which has its intensity driven by this hotspot intensity slider. And we also have this hotspot size. So if I start to lower this, you can see the hotspot gets lower. This allows us to have a hotspot intensity separated from the overall main shape intensity. And we can also work with this fall off here. So for now, I'm going to take this shape intensity and let's just take this back to something like, say, 4. And actually, I'm going to lower it a little bit more. So we'll do something like this here. All right, so this is my first shape that I'm working with, and I'll just move this guy over to, like, say, here. Actually, I'm going to switch this from disk to square. This is going to be kind of like a softbox that I'm working with. So in this case, I'm now going to add another shape. So I actually have a shape node here. So let's just double click, and you can see this is the shape. So now I'm going to select this shape and start to work with its properties, let's make sure we're viewing this in our 3D view. So let's right click, drag and drop this blend here into the 3D view and set this to be the environment input. All right, so what I'm going to do here for this guy, I'm going to set this shape here to disk. And just adjust some of these properties. I think in this particular case, I'm actually going to set this to be a different color. This sRGB button is disabled, which means I'm actually picking linear color values. So here we're just going to pick a value. I'm creating this little kicker light here to introduce kind of like this rim light. And of course, I could come in and start to adjust things like my shape intensity, my soft border fall off, and so on. So here, let's just increase our soft border. So now I want to take a look at using a custom shape. So let's come over here to our last Panorama Shape node. And you can see that here I have this guy, and it's just set to disk. And so if I scroll down here towards the bottom, you can see that we have this enable texture input. So I'm going to set this to true, and this is going to allow me to utilize this input here on this shape. So the first thing I'm going to do is, well, create a shape. So I'm just going to do a search here for polygon. I'm going to choose this polygon 1, and I'm going to use this as the shape. So you'll notice that here, because the output size is set to be relative to parent, it's inheriting the resolution that we have set. And I don't want that, so I'm going to set this to be absolute, and I'm going to set this to be 1024 by 1024 because I want this shape to be a square ratio. Now, this shape that I'm working with right now happens to be grayscale, and I need it to be a color input. So I can just simply add a gradient map to convert that to color, and then I'll just input that to the Panorama Shape node. So now let's double click this blend so that we can see what we're working with here. Now if I zoom in, you'll notice that we have this black background, and I want to remove that. So to do that, I need to make sure, and if we take a look at the Panorama node here, you can see that again we have that black background. So what I want to do is remove that. So I'm going to do that just here on my gradient map. I'm going to come over to the gradient editor, and I'm just going to set a key here for this guy. So for black, and I'm going to set the alpha just to 0, and that's going to remove that black background. So now if I double click and go back here to my blend node, you can see that that black background has been removed. And so now I have this custom shape. So I can go back to the shape, and I can now work with my shape intensity, as well as use the shape manipulator to change the size, scale, and rotation. And that's how you use a custom texture input with the Panorama Shape node. So that's going to cover this tutorial on using the new Panorama template as well as the Panorama Shape node. And as you can see, this node is going to allow us to easily create HDR studio lighting setups here within Substance Designer.